For today's session, my name is Jason Lindstrom. I'll be more formally introducing myself in a second. And we're going to be talking about building a culture of appreciation and how to drive employee engagement through recognition and rewards. And what's super exciting, it's not just us talking about theory. We have a true expert who's going to be walking us through some best practices and ideas on how to make a rewards and recognition program successful. But before we get to that, the fun part, there's a little bit of housekeeping and a few items we're going to run through. So first and foremost, actually this is second most. My name is Jason Lindstrom. As I just said, I'm the CEO over at Bucketlist Rewards. Near and dear to my heart is helping companies build the best cultures possible. I love helping people leaders succeed. And today's session is all about adding value to you, the audience member. And my hope is that everybody will walk away with sort of between 1 to 3 key takeaways. And just as we have 2 quick fun icebreaker questions. One's more playful and one's more business oriented. Up on screen, you'll see what is your favorite item you bought this year? Why don't you go ahead and type that in the chat window? What is the favorite thing you've purchased? Shannon, maybe I'll ask you this in a second. Personally, I recently bought a new Apple Watch. I love it. I love jogging and skiing and whatnot. Oh my goodness, look at this. My house, a bike, a new king mattress. My new trombone, nice. A new vehicle, a laptop, treadmill, pontoon boat. What a fantastic audience. I'm intrigued as to all the stories behind these items. Shannon, what was something you purchased?
Well, I was going to say pontoon boat, believe it or not. So we just finished a cottage build after 2 years, and that was the reward at the end of the build, was the pontoon boat.
Amazing. Amazing. I have not been on a pontoon boat. Is it fun?
It's not a speedboat. It is my favorite kind of boat, though, because you fit a lot of people on it. Nice for sunset cruising around the lake. So I'm a big fan of the pontoon boat.
Awesome. So perfect for relaxing with friends, maybe.
Yes. Yep. You can bring, well, not cocktails because that's not allowed, but you can bring non-alcoholic beverages and snacks on the boat. It's quite a sophisticated way to travel on the lake.
Lori Long says we call those party barges.
Yeah.
Awesome. And now we're going to switch gears and ask a more business oriented question. So what does having a culture of appreciation mean to you? So yeah, go ahead and type in the chat window and we'll give us just a few more seconds and then we'll kick things off here. So in the chat window, what does having a culture of appreciation mean to you? And maybe we'll satisfaction, collaboration, giving feedback in real time, valuing our champions, engagement and retention, lots of thank yous and recognition. Shannon, what does it mean to you?
I'm stealing from people who've replied here, because I think, what does it mean to have a culture of appreciation? I think it happens naturally and organically. People saying thank you, just as part of your DNA. It's part of your organization's DNA. And I think so much of the time we come to work with, the burden of tasks and lots that need to be accomplished, and having somebody notice and pay attention and say thank you and appreciate your contribution just can make your day. So I think that's really what having a culture of appreciation means to me, is it's just natural and happens organically as part of your cultural DNA.
I love it. I love it. And I'm so excited to be digging more into this in a few moments. And thanks very much, everybody, for all the awesome participation. I've been seeing the comments pouring through. Those are great. Great. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items. So as we're all familiar with now, there's this chat box feature. We love to use a chat box. We also have a Q&A submission. I'd highly encourage you to add your questions to the Q&A. If they get added to the chat box, because there's going to be hundreds of comments pouring through, sometimes we'll miss those. So please put the questions in the Q&A window. We will be asking a couple of poll questions as we go through. And as always, we have the professional development credits. We'll be sharing those at the end. We'll show them on screen, and I'll speak to the HRCI credit as well for those of you who dialed in. And of course, this session is recorded, and we're going to be sharing this recording with everybody who's registered for today's session. And please feel free to share it. We love, as I said, our whole mission is to help people leaders build the best cultures possible. And then the person of the hour, Ms. Shannon here. She's the VP of Human Resources over at Contract Pharmaceutical Limited. She has over 25 years experience in the HR space. She on her bucket list of things she's done, she's already been skydiving, vacationing in Hawaii, and up next is she's keen to do a trip to the Maldives and Greece. And I've truly been delighted interacting with you, Shannon. I've learned a ton, been on our short communication so far. And I know you had a chance to meet with a bunch of other people on the Bucketlist team, and everybody's been delighted to work with you, to meet with you. And I'm so excited to present you to this audience today.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited too.
Wonderful. And front sessions brought to you by Bucketlist Rewards, the #1 employee rewards and recognition platform. It's not me saying that. We've been recognized by G2, a number of award sites, and of course, Shannon is representing CPL. So today's session is mostly a fireside chat. It's going to be Shannon sharing best practice and ideas, but to give it some loose guardrails, we're going to be sharing some industry trends and top HR challenges. We're going to be focusing on a lot of strategies to help support, engage, and retain your team, how to utilize a rewards and recognition program to drive engagement. And as always, we love to hear your questions. And as a reminder, just punch them into the Q&A window. And let's do it. Let's jump into today's session. So why don't we start off with the first question here? Shannon, I'd love if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and Contract Pharmaceuticals Limited.
I would love to. So I'm a certified human resources leader. I saw when all of the responses were coming in, we have a lot of US and international participants. If you're from Canada, you might be familiar with that term, certified human resources leader. It is a designation that is provided from the Human Resources Professional Association in Canada. And I do have 25 years of HR experience. I am both proud of that and shocked to hear that it's been 25 years because I have not aged 25 years. I graduated from McMaster University, which is here in Ontario, with a Bachelor of Arts in Labor Studies. And especially 25 years ago, nobody knew what that meant. In fact, lots of my friends and family thought that I was doing some kind of birthing studies. No, that's not what I did. I was actually enrolled in environmental science when I went into university initially, and I took the introduction to the labor movement as kind of my easy elective. And I had one of those moments where I was completely enraptured by the professor standing at the front of the room, Professor Rafferty. I will never forget him. He was a storyteller, and he got up there in every class and he just told stories that were so interesting. I loved going to that class. I loved hearing all about the history of the labor movement. I actually went to guidance and I said, like, what could I do with this as a job? Like, how could this be a career? Because I love this class so much. So I enrolled in labor studies, very small program at the university. In my second year, we did a lot of union work. We did a lot of women in the labor movement. I really thought I was going to be fight for the little guy. That was going to be my lot in life. And then in our final year, the program introduced organizational behavior and human resources management. And it was like the stars and moon and everything aligned. This was the answer. This was the way to balance the needs of the worker and the needs of the organization in one. And that's really where my love of HR started. I have a fun story a little later on about what I did when I came out of university to get started in HR. But that's me. I've had 25 years progressive HR experience. I spent 17 years with one organization. I got really lucky starting early in my career with a well-known organization, GlaxoSmithKline. If anybody's been on my LinkedIn or goes to my LinkedIn, you'll see that. And a variety of progressive HR roles over 17 years. I then went and spent about 3 years in the medical device industry. And I've been here at ConMed for the last 2 years as the VP of HR. So CPL is a CDMO, which is a contract development and manufacturing organization. So you may not know our name, but you'll know our customers. So people like GSK or Pfizer, brand name and generic pharmaceutical companies, they contract us to manufacture and package on their behalf. So we specialize here in CPL in prescription and over-the-counter liquids, creams, and ointments. And that's what we do here in Mississauga, Canada.
Amazing. And I'm so excited to start moving into some of these next questions, because I know
Sure.
past chats with 25 years of experience, we've discussed a bunch of questions and topics, and you've always had this breadth and depth of knowledge inside of your industry. So let's get into it.
Sure.
So second question for you. In your 20 plus years of HR leadership, what have been some of the best lessons learned? Which HR initiatives are you most proud of?
Well, I would say some of the best lessons that I've learned. The first one, there's that story I mentioned I was going to tell you. It's really to see the value in every opportunity. When I started in HR, so 25 years ago when I graduated university, I had to start looking for my first job in the real world. And I was coming from my part-time job experience. So retail, working in the grocery store, but now I've got my degree and I'm ready to go work in a real job. And 25 years ago, I printed out a bunch of resumes. I stuffed them into envelopes. I hand wrote the addresses on the front of the envelopes and stuck a stamp on and sent out probably 250 resumes. And the only call that I got back was from an HR manager at the local Holiday Inn in the city that I was living in. And she said, I have no headcount to hire anybody, and I have no money to pay you. But I have a lot of work, I have a lot of knowledge and experience and passion for HR, and I'm willing to teach you everything that I know because I need help so much with the work on my plate. So I went through a formal interview process. I had to do references. I got an official offer letter for this volunteer opportunity, and I started in my very first HR department working without pay. It was the best decision I ever made. And I love in 25 years, I still tell this story because she not only taught me a lot of things that I still refer to and use today, she was also my official sponsor into that association that I'm part of, the HRPA, back then HRPAO. You had to have somebody who's already a member sponsor you. She sponsored me. She also organized lunch with a colleague / friend of hers who ended up offering me a job, my first paid HR gig. And that job put me in the front of opportunities with GlaxoSmithKline that I ended up being hired for and spending 17 years there. So I think all of that stemmed from my decision to accept a volunteer opportunity. And I think that's one of my greatest lessons learned is to find the value in every opportunity that you've got. So that's one. The second is also something that over my 25 years has only grown, and that is how critical people are to an organization and to your HR strategy. I know that sounds silly. You've chosen a career in HR. Obviously, you understand the importance of people. But I think over 20 plus years, it's just gotten clearer and clearer and clearer how critical people and people skills are to an organization's success, specifically your people leaders. Coaching, mentoring, people skills, all of this is critical to leadership. I have seen really smart, high IQ people fail because they can't master the people relationships. So you've heard this for years. People don't leave organizations, people leave people. Relationships are the predictor of whether people are going to stay at your organization or not. Do they feel a connection to the organization through their relationships at work? Obviously, mainly through their manager. If you don't invest in people and in developing your leaders, it doesn't matter how good your product or service is, your business will not thrive. And that kind of leads to my last lesson learned, which is the value of recognition. We as humans, and I do speak generally, obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, as humans, we crave recognition. This comes in a variety of forms. Not everybody wants to get called up on stage and make a speech in front of a room of hundreds of people, But everyone wants to feel that their contribution matters, that someone is watching and noticing, and that you're adding value. Your presence makes a difference. Recognition doesn't have to be ceremonies and celebrations. We saw that in your poll question. It's thank yous and words of appreciation. One of my best lessons learned is the power of recognition. And even more than rewards is just being recognized and building a culture that encourages employee recognition. I think those are some of my top lessons learned. In terms of initiatives that I'm most proud of, it would be remiss of me not to say the implementation of effective, successful reward and recognition programs at 3 companies that I've been part of. That I'm super proud of those 3 initiatives in particular. Now, in 25 years, I have a lot of things I'm proud of, but I think in terms of being topical to today's discussion, it would be the implementation of 3 successful reward and recognition programs.
Amazing. I heard, so I just want to pull a couple of quick comments from the people listening. So as you're sharing there's a bunch of, as I take it, new people in the HR space who loved your entrance story of like when you spot an opportunity, you jump on it. And then in and around the importance of connection to an organization and valuing your people. There's a lot of great comments. Nyala, I hope I'm saying your name right. What you said is, I love one-on recognition and simple thank yous. And Deidre said, all such simple things, but so often missing. So I think a lot of your messages are clearly resonating with some of the attendees today.
That's great.
If I may, I just want to double down on another theme that I heard you say, Shannon, which is around just the fundamental importance of rewards and recognition. And I just have 2 points in and around that. The first, for those of you who pay attention to psychology or Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like this is what fundamentally motivates humans. Down at the bottom is things like food and shelter, like just taking care of and safety. And right above that is the desire to be loved and appreciated and be socially accepted. And this is core to everybody's kind of evolutionary DNA. It's a part of who we are. And so whether we call it employee recognition or just taking good care of people, it's fundamental to human beings. And I like yourself, I've seen this play out so many times. One of my most distinct memories was I was down in Pennsylvania and I was watching a recognition program get kicked off. The CEO was recognizing different people around the room. There's hundreds of people in attendance. And when the CEO recognized one employee, she started crying. And I was like, well, that's a pretty big emotional reaction. And I approached her afterwards and I'm like, could you tell me more about this? And she's like, I've been working here 7 years and that's the first time somebody said thank you. And she's like, it was so important and meaningful to me. So yeah, these people are out there like they're keen, they're working their butts off, keen for the recognition.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to jump to the next question. What are some of the top industry challenges you've seen around employee engagement and retention?
Well, I think what I'm going to share is no different than everyone on this call, trying to have a company culture in a post-pandemic world. The pandemic just turned a lot of organizations upside down. People did figure out how to work remotely. And we've heard some really crazy stories of companies that had never had remote options before, or you would ever think could do work remotely. And some of those companies have chosen not to return to a traditional bricks and mortar setting because the remote stuff worked so well. So even in a hybrid work arrangement, and here at CPL, we do have a hybrid work arrangement, you need to figure out how to maintain a company culture, especially for those of us who relied on face-to-face interactions for a lot of organic culture growth, culture development. And now we need to be intentionally setting the culture and doing it in a way that feels organic. So this is a huge challenge for HR. I know for myself, for a lot of the colleagues that I'm interacting with, is trying to figure out how to do this so that it doesn't feel forced and unnatural. But we have changed so much in the last 2.5, 3 years. My second one is really the remote hybrid working conditions, because it's changed the work environment. And I think it's changed workers. So our employees are demanding more flexibility. They're craving it, but they're also demanding it. So I can remember, because again, I'm 25 years in here. I remember when these kinds of things were seen as like a millennial ask or expectation that people would put value on time off or on flexible working arrangements. And organizations were like, well, that's not how it works. Like, the job's here 9 to 5, and this is the building you sit in from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And I think the pandemic taught us what is possible. Remote work is possible. And so we've lost employees here at CPL because they've got greater flexibility in working conditions elsewhere. It's really forced us to stop and say, hey, if you want to be competing for top talent, what do you need to be offering? And I don't think these requests can be ignored. We need to listen to employees or be prepared to lose them. And I think we're seeing a shift. I liken it to the real estate market, where you've got a buyer's market or a seller's market. And you know what that means, right? It's a lot of supply and demand, but you end up with an advantage to who gets to set the parameters, being the seller or the buyer. And as I relate that to an employment situation, I think we're seeing this is a shift to an employee market. I think employees are taking a much larger role in negotiating their working conditions. I heard great stories through the pandemic from people who said, I've never been home when my children have come home from school, or I've never been here to help get them ready in the morning, or to help a spouse and to share the workload, the home workload. And so people got a taste of that, and they're not really interested in letting it go. So I think that's my second industry challenge. And then my third one would be the availability of roles, which is a little bit on that supply and demand topic. I think we're seeing more vacancies. Job boards are really full. I think there's more competition for talent than we've seen in a while. It might have been the pandemic that gave organizations the opportunity to do a little bit of reshuffling and rethinking. But as we come out of the thick of it, and I hope we are coming out of the thick of it, we're seeing more and more vacancies and opportunities. So I don't know if this is the great resignation and reshuffle creating more vacancies, or if it's organizational driven, but there's definitely a lot more opportunity for employees. I think all three of those things really do feed into each other, but I see those as really some of HR's biggest challenges that we're facing right now, and directly related to engagement and retention.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny you talk about like the growing number of vacancies. One of my colleagues here at work, Rebecca, was sharing some labor shortage stats by industry. And as of about 30 days ago, in the United States, there's a 28% labor shortage in tech. And I found that kind of interesting, because I know in the news we hear about the narrative is like, and indeed a lot of these companies are laying people off, like the Twitters of the world and many others. But there's still tons of other companies that are so keen to scoop up all these great and talented people and employ them. So there's still tons of job opportunities out in the market.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just quickly, Jason, that's the challenges from an HR perspective. I want to share the opportunity that it presents as well. So from an employer perspective, you're no longer restricted to a specific geography. So when you talk about the opportunity that exists for employees, that same opportunity exists for employers. And I think we're just dipping our toe into this right now. But if you fast forward a year, a couple of years from now, all of a sudden you're going to be having a lot more cross-pollination, where you physically reside versus where the headquarters of the company you reside may be. And I think that's a relatively new area for us to really sink our teeth into. Obviously, there's a lot of legalities that brings up and whatnot, but just from a talent pool perspective, competition is increasing.
Absolutely. Next, we're going to be, I'd love to ask you the question, what's one word you'd use to describe the culture at CPL?
So my one word that I chose is evolving. So not unlike what we've just discussed in our previous questions, we're experiencing a whole bunch of challenges as we return to a post-pandemic working environment. So we are dealing with turnover. We also had some leadership changes at our company in the senior levels and long tenure. That's creating an opportunity for us to do some rebuilding. So we are definitely evolving here. We embarked on our very first employee engagement survey April of this year. So we learned directly from the employees what they wanted us to focus on that was driving the most engagement. It's kept us very busy, and it's going to keep us very busy as we go into 2023. We're actually launching a performance program at CPL. I'm expecting a lot of folks on the line have one already at their organizations. I know this is the first company I've worked for that didn't have one. So I'm thrilled that we got the approval to look at implementing one for early of 2023. We are taking steps towards building a performance-based culture. So again, that's that tie into the intentional culture build that you want to feel organic. We're actually dipped our toe in last year by implementing a reward and recognition program. This month has been a year since we implemented it, but it was the first time here at CPL that you were able to call out and recognize individual contributions. So it was a big step. It was subtle, but it was a big step to starting to differentiate. That next big step is now setting up a cyclical performance program with goal setting and evaluation against goals. So I think we're on the cusp of some pretty significant cultural shifting and evolution at CPL.
That's awesome. And what an interesting narrative as well. And I think what I heard you say is you did an employee engagement survey, and then what came out of that was a performance management program along with a performance-based culture and the employee recognition program. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep, absolutely.
Very cool.
We're going to resurvey again in April, so I hope to have some statistics to share with you then.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And I'm looking forward to digging into that one in a little bit more in a few more minutes. And I see some great questions in and around that.
Sure.
Like the measurement, rolling things out, and then the post-program evaluation. Great. So obviously the topic of today is about rewards and recognition. So I'd love to dig deeper into this topic. So if you could tell us more about your experiences building an impactful recognition and rewards program, like how do these programs impact employee engagement, retention? What sort of feedback have you heard? I'd love to get some experience shares around this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I mentioned I've done this 3 times now at 3 different organizations. I've done it 3 times because I know how impactful it is and I've seen the results. So the first 2 companies that I did this in, we actually had engagement results telling us that we were not doing a good job at recognizing and rewarding employees. We didn't have that answer here, but I had done it twice before and I knew that it was something that was going to be beneficial. So in all 3 scenarios, our objectives were quite similar. So I'm going to give you 5 objectives that we laid out for our reward and recognition program. So 1, we wanted to create a culture of recognition where noticing good work is done regularly. So I think you pointed out a few folks in the poll question who, thank yous go a long way, or your example where somebody hadn't been thanked for 7 years and the emotional response that she had to being recognized. Sadly, there are a lot of stories like that. So as we evolve our culture at CPL or any organization, being able to have a culture where giving recognition and noticing good work is done regularly and just part of your organizational DNA was something we wanted to achieve by implementing a program. We also really wanted to do this in a way that was very easy to do and also visible. So in my last organization, while I introduced a program, they had some paper-based thank you cards, really, but they were private because somebody would write you a thank you card or your manager would write you a thank you card. It would show up at your desk and you'd read it and put it in your drawer. So I really wanted something that was going to be visible to the employee population because when you're creating a culture of recognition, recognition breeds more recognition breeds more recognition. And so that was another goal we had. A third one, a phrase that I coined in the first company that I implemented the program was putting the power of recognition in the hands of each and every employee. And the reality is, you don't have to wait for a manager during a year-end performance review to point out all the good things that you've done, or we shouldn't be waiting for a manager to point out all the things that we've done at the end of the year. Sometimes your manager isn't even the one who's closest to what it is that you've done that is recognition worthy. That might be a colleague. That might be somebody who's a manager, but in a different team, who happens to be on a cross-functional team with you and is able to see what it is that you've done and contributed. So we really wanted to have a program that allowed employees to recognize each other. Fourth, it really needed to be personalized. So rewards are only rewards if they're valued by the employee. So we wanted flex and choice in this program. Interestingly, you know, a company that I worked for used to have a wine. I can't remember if it was I think it was wine of the month. And it went to certain sales achievement. If you achieved a certain thing, you were sent, you know, a bottle or a case of wine. And the funny thing was, some of the people on that list didn't drink wine. So how does this turn into any kind of recognition or reward for you if you're not a wine drinker? So making sure that it was personalized so that it means something to you. And super important to all of the finance folks that I've worked with in my 3 companies was to make the program scalable from a budget perspective. So we're not just, you know, all of a sudden opening up the bank accounts and paying everybody, because I actually think non-financial recognition carries a ton of weight. It's not always just financial recognition, but we wanted to make a program that's scalable. So in all 3 organizations, those 5 objectives were what we set out to do in order to build a reward and recognition program that would be impactful, that definitely would impact engagement and retention. And I think we were successful 3 times.
I love it. And if I may,
Yeah.
we often get asked questions around like, what are some good goals for a recognition program? And I think you've done a really thoughtful, deliberate approach as to like, this is what we want to achieve. You've identified the 5 high-level goals of the program. And I suspect, and even reading the comments, like these goals are really resonating with many of our listeners today. So that was
good.
But I think there's going to be a lot of great takeaways from the goal setting. And in a few moments, I think I'm really excited to hear how the program, if those are the goals, what were the outcomes, how is it performing, and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, sure.
This is great. So how's your experience been with recognition and rewards platform? Like, how has it been performing? What return have you gotten from implementing the program? Like, how do you measure it and all that good stuff?
Well, my experience has been amazing, hence doing it 3 times. So, hey, what works, do it again. So in the 3rd organization, which is CPL here, the implementation perspective was really easy. So, well, it wasn't all 3 organizations actually. So easy to use and have a high return on our investment. I think the biggest visible indicator of that, at least in my last 2 organizations, was the movement of recognition on the annual engagement survey. So in those 2 companies, we looked into a reward and recognition program as a result of seeing poor recognition scores. And in my last organization in particular, the year after we implemented it, recognition was the biggest mover year over year in the engagement survey. So it fell into the bottom 3 in year 1. And by the year 2, after we'd implemented the program, it jumped up to one of the top 3. So it's the biggest mover. That's a huge indication. I think watching redemptions is another pretty cool indicator. So for CPL, gift cards are by far and away the largest items that we see redeemed. In the past, we've seen more experiences. I think the pandemic killed that. We offer a bunch of company-specific awards like cold hard cash and vacation days. Those are high redemptions. They get a lot of use. We have lunch with the CEO. That also gets picked often, so people can sit and have, you know, secluded one-on-one time with the CEO. And I'd say probably the last way that I know the program works is the anecdotal comments that you hear from employees, the usage, being able to see how many people go in there and use the program, managers who have the ability to give financial recognition, but also our employees who can give each other recognition that doesn't have financial stuff attached to it. Just hearing people talk about the program, the amount of times I've been thanked myself for bringing the program to CPL. I think all of those things tell me that we've got the right return for implementing the program. And I will have the facts and data in another 6 months' time when we rerun our engagement survey and we see what happened to recognition.
This is awesome. This is awesome. And I'm so happy it's been so impactful. And now we have a great question from an audience member.
Sure.
And I'll let you answer the question. I'll give some context on it as well. But Sherry asked, thanks, Shannon. Can you share more details about the recognition program you've implemented? Did you use any vendors? Can you share any names?
Well, I can. So I can tell you that my very first time implementing it, we're going back quite a few years. That particular vendor wasn't in existence anymore when I went to do it the second time around. So I did, with my team, investigate. I think we had 6 different vendors that we interviewed. We asked for proposals from, we had demos of their site, and we chose Bucketlist, which is actually Jason's company. Funny enough, this experience is my first time meeting Jason, but the rest of the team they met all of our criteria that we were looking to achieve, all 5 of those objectives. So I implemented Bucketlist in my last organization. And when I came here and knew that we were going to do it again, I didn't really go and investigate other platforms. I knew Bucketlist. I knew what they were capable of doing. So I just tapped on them again and said, hey, can we do it again? And they said yes.
And thanks for that, Shannon. Another attendee said, can you please spell the names? It's Bucketlist Rewards. It's the company. Here, I'll put it in the chat window, Bucketlist Rewards. If you want to learn more, we'll share more information at the end. Shannon's been being super graceful. I've intentionally actually asked her not to talk too much about Bucketlist because I so deeply believe in the importance of recognizing employees, taking good care of employees. I don't really care if you go with us, you build it in-house or somebody else. I just think you need to do this inside your organization. We are the best one out there, but that's beside the point. I just think it's really, so we haven't talked about Bucketlist too much, but all the fundamentals, a strategy, the ideas, they can be universally applied. And that's the key takeaway from today. Cool. So I got a question for the audience. And the reason I'm going to bring it up is I don't think it's unique to you, Shannon. So what I heard you say in your answer is you surveyed your staff prior to a recognition program, and the organization was scoring low in recognition. From the attendees here today, does anybody else do an like an annual employee engagement survey or survey employees, say, on a quarterly basis? And if so, maybe just type that in the chat window. Are many people surveying staff? No. I just started, yes, no, but we'd like to quarterly, yes. So biannual, so it looks like a big chunk, 60 to 80% of you, yes, annual. This is my informal data gathering going on right here. I see mostly yeses and there's a couple of no's. And then from those of you who survey your staff, are many of you scoring low in the recognition quadrant? And the reason I've asked is I hear this a lot from companies that, we surveyed our employees and one of our lowest performance areas is in fact employee recognition. Oh yeah, okay, yes, it dropped this year, middle of the road, yes, low in recognition, not low, but lower than other areas annually. I already know it's low. So Shannon, indeed, you're not at all unique. Anyways, and the reason I'm asking this and prompting this, Shannon, when it comes to selling through a program or getting management buy-in for an employee recognition program, how do you do that? Like, how do you get buy-in on a program like this?
Well, I think having the low recognition scores on your survey, if your company's invested in the survey and is asking employees for their opinions, you're already halfway there because you've got the attention of your executive team. So that's good. But I think the other thing is, if you take a look around your organization at where you're spending money, GSK, for example, we funded our program by discontinuing some other things that weren't working. My last company, we discontinued the Wine of the Month Club. And all of us, so you might say, well, we don't have the money to implement this. But if you take a look around at where you're spending your money, you might find you're spending it on things that have less value and less bang for your buck. I've been with organizations that had company sporting event tickets. And so you could reward 2 people because you had 2 seats. So you could, and usually you wouldn't send 2 people together. You'd send them and their spouse or a guest. So each game you got 1 person in an organization of 2,500 recognized. But if we stopped purchasing those annual sporting event tickets, you had a pretty good chunk to put into the performance program. So I definitely think that helps. And then that scalable piece the biggest issue organizations have is cost. They're afraid of cost. So all 3 of the programs that I designed had different capabilities. So in my first organization, peers could financially recognize each other. We built in some measures, so that there was a maximum allowed in a given year. In this organization today, we don't have peers being able to give financial recognition to each other. So you can build a program that is scalable to your budget. And I think even if you built one that was not financial recognition and only the thank yous and the appreciations, that probably is going to take you a long way along the curve of employee engagement.
I love it. Awesome. It's so many good lessons and key points in there. So you surveyed your staff, that you found out you're scoring low on recognition. You took action to correct it. You looked at what was already being spent. And then you're like, we're already spending a decent amount of cash on this program. We can simply reinvest it into a more strategic way to recognize team members. Great story. And if I could expand upon that a little bit, because I think you're really honest. Something that a lot of people don't know about is the rewards are cool and they're impactful, they're lovely, but the recognition on its own is so important, and making it public is so important, and making it available for everybody is so important. And as a kind of a neat hybrid program that can be really impactful, you can do a rewards and recognition program. You can even hand out points, but as Shannon said earlier, a lot of times you can attach points to things like vacation days, to swag, to things that have almost low cost, no cost to your organization. There's ways to roll these out in a very cost-effective manner where they're still super impactful. So I think Shannon, so many good lessons in what you're just saying there. Cool. I'm going to open it up to Q&A in about 2 seconds here. I see a ton of questions rolled in. I also have a few questions on my own side that I love to ask. But I just want to summarize just a few of the takeaways, information we've discussed so far today. One is that relationships are a predictor of whether an employee will stay at your organization or not. I loved your line that people will join a company or a brand, but they quit due to their team or managers. Recognition does not have to be public or splashy. A simple acknowledgement goes a long way. And in the comments, I saw that resonated really well with the attendees. Employees are demanding more from an organization than ever before. Agreed. And post-pandemic intentional culture development requires more focus from HR. Cool. Before we get into the QA session, I see a huge number of questions in my little chat bot up there, which I'm going to get to in a moment. I'm going to pop up 2 quick poll questions. Excuse me. So poll question number 1. We'd love to hear what you thought of this webinar. And sorry, I got a poll question. You guys are awesome. I see a whole bunch of people punching your answers into the window. In the chat window, Shannon, you got to feel proud of yourself. Carolyn gave it a 9. Julie, a 9.
Nice.
Celine, 9. lots of 9s. Awesome, guys. Thank you for the candid feedback. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. And then we'll get to the next question, which is, do you want to learn more about Bucketlist rewards? We are the platform that Shannon has used for our last 3 organizations. We are a full enterprise program. What makes us unique is we are, in fact, the easiest to use recognition platform in the industry, rated from amongst hundreds of different platforms, rated #1 for ease of use The reason that's important is when it's easy to use, participation rates go way up. We also have the highest customer satisfaction. We have a absolutely world-class customer satisfaction score, but most importantly, we care about delivering results to your organization. And as Shannon said, each time she's rolled out our platform, she saw a huge lift in the employee engagement surveys. So if you want to learn more about Bucketlist, I'll just throw this poll question up on screen. I'd highly recommend it. And I'll let this run for just a few more seconds. And while we're on this slide, Shannon, anything you want to say about working with Bucketlist?
I have only positive, wonderful things to say about Bucketlist. I've had, I came back. I think that's the biggest testimonial I can give, is that when I came to a new organization and had similar needs, I didn't even go to the market to see who was around. I just came back to you guys. So, it's funny. I've given this feedback to members of your team, and it's a funny thing to comment on. But what I love about every time I have a meeting with Bucketlist, there is a detailed agenda that always feels like it's going to be too much to cover, and we always finish with time to spare. You've got a very well-trained, efficient team that I just love working with.
If it's okay, I'd love to pass that recognition
Please.
on. I love it. Yeah, I am a huge fan of agendas, and I think the team is as well, because it's nice to have structure.
It works. It's working.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be organized. Cool. Cool. And so we'll get a couple of credit pieces of information and then the Q&A, which we'll get to momentarily. So for those of you who've dialed in today, I'm just going to read out the HRCI credit, and it's on screen right now. The ID is 609473. That is 609473. And up on screen, you can see Shannon's LinkedIn information. And I'm going to go to the QA section now as well. So, yeah, okay, here's the first one from Kim. So thank you, Kim, for this question. Do you have any examples of what we can do for recognition programs, ideas that can get our employees engaged?
Well, I think if you want to look into a program like this, we didn't really get into the specifics of Bucketlist, but anybody who uses any social media platform is going to find this extremely easy to use. So yes, there is a training element to it, but I actually think you probably could launch this without one and people would still figure out how to do it. So, a center section that has like a news feed that populates everybody's recognition to each other. You can like it and comment on it, which keeps the recognition going. So I think that would be my number one suggestion, is to look into it. I think you'll be surprised that the cost is not unreasonable to implement and to maintain. That would be my number one recommendation for recognition programs. If you absolutely can't find the budget or the IT technology within your organization, I would try and replicate elements of what you can get in this program in a homegrown system, or just by starting to encourage through your people managers to do more recognition, it will grow organically within the rest of the organization. You can even just have an email campaign. You can have a bulletin board if you have a physical office building where people can post recognition to each other. Just get started.
Take action. I love it.
Yeah.
And then here's an interesting one. In a school setting where hybrid does not work as easy, do you have any ideas that could help?
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually have a lot of my family members work in the school setting. So hybrid in terms of being required to be on site versus working remotely, or in the context of a recognition program?
You know what? Why don't we go in context of a recognition program for this one? So
yeah, so I think the context of having technology support you, that's one of the greatest. It's the reason this remote stuff is working, right? We couldn't have done this remote work 25 years ago when I was sending out paper-based resumes. looking for work. The world has evolved in such a way that your physical geography has a lot less to do with what you can and can't do. So I think even if you're in a school setting and hybrid work isn't a possibility, you can use technology to connect people virtually and organize a reward and recognition program virtually too.
Fantastic. I got maybe a bit of a trickier question if you're ready for it,
Sure.
Shannon. So there's a bit of a context around this one, and I'll leave their name anonymous. I'm a new HR manager in a small town locality. Our town council's agenda beats up on the employees and lacks recognition and appreciation. Our town manager tries to promote a positive employee culture, but every month following the council meetings, you see the energy bubble pop. People go above and beyond to make others feel less value. Any suggestions that I can do to fix or promote this situation?
Well, my gut HR person response to you is awareness. So I think what you're identifying is this energy bubble pop are the people in the positions of authority and who are responsible for that energy bubble pop aware of the shadow that they cast. There's a really good philosophy of the shadow of a leader. And you can do a little bit of research on shadow of a leader. And I think sometimes people don't understand how impactful they are. I also think there's a school of thought, which I hope is dying, but a school of thought that you manage by an iron fist. And I think we've proven, that whole carrot and stick, the carrot is a lot more effective at driving engagement and motivation and ultimately organizational success and results than a stick is. So I think for you as a new HR manager, continue to keep your eyes open and making the observations that you're making, and then find the right place to share those observations, along with some tips for, instead of, I would suggest this. And I think sometimes, you might get lucky and someone just isn't aware of the impact that they have, sucking the energy out of a room. So hopefully just keep doing what you're doing and taking good notes and making good observations about what the climate is like and how you can bring about some change and awareness.
Yeah, awesome. The concept of shadow of the leader resonates so deeply with me. I have another good saying, it's not mine, that everything rises and falls with leadership. Or a funny this is from a financial advisor who's a very successful guy. He's like, the fish rots from the head down. Like you can all it's always pretty clear when things are going right or wrong. There's a source to it.
For sure.
So here's the next question. Can you give a specific example of how you put the employee recognition program into the hands of employees? What did it look like?
Well, from all three organizations, we launched on company software, like on company, our landing page, our intranet, internal to the company. I think all three times we launched with an email that went out to employees with a link. Actually, Bucketlist has an app. So in today's world, everybody's on their phones all the time. So you've got it literally at your fingertips. And when recognition is received throughout the program, you are notified electronically that you've been recognized, so you can log in and see it. And then I personally like to just go in at least once a week, but usually more than that. And I just read through what recognition has been given to everybody else in the organization. I like and comment on it. I do that because I love the program and I'm an advocate of the program, but I actually do it because I like to know what's going on in the organization. And sometimes I learn things that I didn't know about projects that we've got going on. And, okay, I didn't know we finished this particular project, or I didn't know we had people coming in on the weekend because we had a batch run overtime. So I'm learning through that as well about how the business is being run and what our employees are up to.
That's awesome, Shannon. I do the exact same thing. Like I love monitoring it, just watching all the good stuff that's happening. That's all this cool notifications of work.
Yeah, I love it.
And one maybe extension of what you said, something we do, and we encourage others to do it as well, is if the program's up and running, just weave it into any sort of regular fireside chat, whether that's a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting. So if you're already, a lot of companies have like an all hands meeting monthly, for example. In the first 5 minutes, call it the good news section and just read through your activity feed and call out all the good stuff that's happening. And it's a great way to highlight the program, and it certainly boosts participation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then last question, we've asked this previously, but I'd love to ask one more time in a slightly different format from one of our attendees, and then we'll move to wrap up. This is from Lacey. So I researched these types of vendors, and when I present them to our C-suite, they dismiss the idea. Do you have any suggestions for getting buy-in and trying to help them understand the need?
Well, probably a little, not to suggest you haven't done it, but more research so that you can show facts and data to them. I'm sure Jason could help you with some actual statistics that demonstrate how there's a return on the investment. I do think that it's a mindset shift, and I'd love to say that everybody is convincible, but that's not always going to be the case. I think organizations that are forward thinking, organizations that value people and understand the connection between people and organizational success won't need a lot of convincing. The other thing you could do, Lacey, is go with a non-financial recognition program to start, so it doesn't cost the company anything, and say, guys, give me 6 months, give me a year. Let's see what happens. And you do have to give things a little bit of time, but give me a year to implement a non-financial recognition program. And if we see that it's got impact and success, then give me some cash to turn this into a financial recognition program.
Amazing. So Shannon, thank you so much. And I know sometimes it might be nice to hear it from me, but as I'm reading the comments, there's so many people who loved the information you shared today. Bruna said, thank you so much. Nayala said, I really enjoyed this webinar. Mara said, I also enjoyed the seminar. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon and Jason. Interesting seminar. I enjoyed every bit of it. It was great. Thanks, Tia. Thanks. I needed this. So awesome job. Sorry, they're totally pouring in now. That was not the intention. But Shannon,
awesome.
And lastly, I just wanted to thank you, all the attendees today. Great participation. It was awesome having you here today. And as I said, our intention is just to have you guys walk away with 1 to ideally 5 awesome actionable ideas. I certainly have taken pages of notes in front of me, so I'm looking forward to and hoping everybody gets a chance to deploy these in their own workplace. So thanks very much, everybody.